Nefra, who bars the way. This is probably the easiest boss in the entire operation. Nefra is fairly simple to kill. Okay, so starting off with group placement. Now the positioning here is only really important for the tanks. Both of your tanks will need to keep Nefra's back facing the rest of the group. This is tanking 101, keep the boss turned away. The most important thing for your tanks is that they need to be stood together. The thing is that Nefra deals a lot of damage. When one of them has threat of the boss, they will both share the damage. You will know when you are sharing the damage because there will be a green circle appear underneath both of the tanks. So when this green circle is underneath both of the tanks, we know that they are sharing the damage coming from Nefra between them. This is virtually all the tanks need to do, just keep Nefra faced away and stay close together. As for the rest of the group, it doesn't really matter too much where you're going to stand. However, the most convenient way to do this, especially for your healers, is if the rest of the group stands together. This can make good practice for veteran mode if you plan on doing that later. Being stood behind the boss is going to be much better for your healers to reach everybody via AoE heals. So the next mechanic for Nefra is going to be the Overload Assault Droid. Now this is an ad that is going to spawn 30 seconds into the fight. It will then keep spawning again every 30 seconds after that point. Now this ad will normally target the person with the highest amount of threat in the group. However, it can also seem very random at times. All this droid is going to do is run towards one of your group members, plant a large AoE underneath itself and explode. Now in story mode it doesn't really deal that much damage, but it should still be avoided. So when this ad does spawn, just move out of its AoE. Now if you want to practice a different mechanic for veteran mode, then you can assign one of your group members to attack this droid when it spawns and kite it away from the group so it can explode away from the entire group. Because in veteran mode, this droid will kill you. Okay, so the third and final mechanic for Nefra is going to be the debuff that you get during the fight. Now this debuff is called Voice of the Masters. This is what it looks like. Now this debuff will tick for roughly 2k damage, so it's not a massive threat to the group, but if your healers are under-geared or if your tanks are under-geared, you might run into trouble. So the best thing to do with this debuff is to just cleanse it. Healers should prioritize cleansing their tanks. If any of the DPS in the group have their own cleansing ability, then they should cleanse themselves. If not, it's no big deal, you'll likely be able to heal through it. If you are planning on moving on to veteran mode later, then be sure to practice cleansing this debuff, because in veteran mode it does a lot more damage, and if nobody is cleansed, then you will likely wipe. You'll know when the debuff goes out because you'll see Nefra do this kind of scream animation. You can also time it if you really want to. The first debuff will appear 15 seconds into the fight, and then it will reappear every 30 seconds after that point. And that is how you kill Nefra. That is all you need to know. Gate Commander Draxus. Draxus is relatively difficult to a new player. This is likely because it isn't a simple just DPS the boss down kind of fight. This entire encounter is based on waves of ads. In total, there is 9. The boss itself, Draxus, leaves the fight on multiple occasions, leaving his ads to fight you. However, you can use this to your advantage as Draxus leaves the battlefield when he hits a certain amount of HP. Draxus will leave 3 times in total. First when he hits near 80%, second near 55%, and lastly near 25%. Before I go through the fight, let me explain the first debuff you need to look out for. This debuff is called Corrosive Grenade. Draxus throws this out to a random group member and it ideally needs to be cleansed. It ticks for around 4.5k damage, so it is quite dangerous. This is what it looks like. Now the main focus in this fight is the wave of ads and how to deal with them, so let's go through that. I'll explain what to do with Draxus as we go through the waves. To begin with, Draxus will be alone. As normal, tank him faced away from the group. When he hits near 80% HP, he'll leave and wave 1 will enter. Wave 1 is easy. A bunch of subtrophs will spawn from the east and from the west. The best way to deal with them is to group them up and AoE nuke them. If you plan on doing this in veteran mode, the subtrophs will explode upon death and deal a huge amount of damage to anyone close by, so try to practice killing them from afar. Once they're done, wave 2 will enter. Wave 2 is dispatches. These ads are more annoying than they are threatening. They will spam force lightning on a random group member. Just kill all of them that enter the room and then wave 3 will begin. Wave 3 is dispatches and corruptors. Draxus will also return in wave 3. There will be 1 corruptor at either side of the room. These are the ads that you need to kill first. they will cast a debuff on the group called Mass Affliction. This is what it looks like. The cast for Mass Affliction can be interrupted. In story mode, this debuff doesn't deal too much damage, roughly 2k per tick, but should still be interrupted. Mass Affliction can also be cleansed, so all is not lost if an interrupt is not performed in time. In veteran mode, this debuff will wipe you if it is not cleansed or interrupted. Okay, once your corruptors are dead, it's important that your DPS shift their focus to Draxus. Leave at least one dispatcher alive, so wave 4 doesn't begin yet. You can place a marker on a dispatcher to let people know not to kill it, just like this. When Draxus hits near 55% HP, he will leave once again and you can return your focus to the waves of adds. Finish off your last dispatcher to begin wave 4. In wave 4 we have dismantlers and subtoroffs. As before with subtoroffs, they are easy to kill, so just shift your priority to the dismantlers. Now, the dismantlers are only dangerous for their ability called Strong Swipe. This ability will knock the target flying across the room. In story mode, that's all they really do, but in veteran mode it's a different story. They will give the person they swiped a debuff, which makes them take 1000 times more damage if they are hit by the same dismantler again. So practice stealthing out of combat after being hit by this, or have someone with a taunt take the dismantler off you. Once your dismantlers and subtoroffs are dead, wave 5 will begin. This is where it starts to become a little bit more difficult. In this wave we have 2 corruptors stood in the south and 2 dispatchers in the east and west. Draxus will also return for this wave. Have the tank face Draxus away once again, just as normal. Have all of your DPS move to the south and interrupt, and of course kill the corruptors first. Once they are dead, repeat what you did in wave 3 and leave at least one dispatcher alive. Mark it if needed. So you can DPS Draxus down until he leaves again. Draxus will leave at approximately 25% HP. Once he leaves, finish off your last dispatcher and wave 6 will begin. Now wave 6, as before with wave 5, becomes a little bit more difficult. This time we have one corruptor, one despoiler and one dispatcher in the south. There will also be one dismantler spawning from the east and from the west. Now first off, have 2 DPS take a dismantler each. They can keep it busy while the other DPS handle the corruptor in the south. If possible, have someone CC the despoiler or stun it. The despoiler will likely run into the middle of the battlefield. It needs to be CC'd or stunned to prevent it from healing the adds. Once your DPS in the south have killed the corruptor, move on to the dismantlers and kill them. Then finish off the despoiler and the remaining dispatcher. And now, wave 7 will begin. This wave is a little different, but not necessarily more difficult. In this wave we have 2 guardians and 2 subtoroffs. Focus your attention to the guardians. You can have your tank taunt them, but they will likely switch targets quite often. The important thing with the guardians is their slam ability. It's a large cone-based shaped AoE that will deal a lot of damage to anyone stood inside of it. You have 2 options, interrupt it or move out of it. They also have an ability called Thundering Blast. This can also be interrupted, but it will only deal damage to the person that it is targeting. Since there is 2 guardians, it's important that you avoid their slam ability the most, because while being hit by 1 is bad, being hit by 2 is deadly. Try to practice moving out of the AoE rather than interrupting it, as in veteran mode they cannot be interrupted. Once they are dead, wave 8 will begin. Wave 8 has 2 corruptors each in the east and west. One despoiler which spawns in the south but will likely once again run into the middle of the battlefield. For this wave, split up your DPS once again. 2 DPS at each side of the room, interrupting and killing the corruptors. Tanks can also help with this. Try and have your healers CC or stun the despoiler, because if the despoiler is allowed to roam free, it will heal the corruptors. Once all are dead, wave 9 begins. Now this is the final wave. In this wave, Draxus will return of course, but will likely spawn a little bit closer to the middle of the room. There will also be 2 guardians as seen in wave 7, along with 2 dispatchers and 1 corruptor in the south. There is 2 ways of beating this wave and the fight. You can immediately focus Draxus and finish him off, which will win you the fight, but the adds will still stick around. Alternatively, you can send 2 DPS to the south to kill the corruptor, so it doesn't make the final fight too hard on your healers with it casting Mass Affliction. And of course at the same time, have your tank face Draxus away from the group, and if you have another tank or a DPS with a taunt, try to have them kite the guardians away from the group, because obviously there's going to be a lot going on in this wave, and the last thing you want is a bunch of slams happening. Once the corruptor in the south is dead, which should happen fairly quickly, move on to the guardians and finish them off. This gives you plenty of breathing room for finishing off Draxus without having a bunch of adds attacking you. The dispatchers are not important and are weak, so leave them till last. Doing this the second way is good practice for veteran mode, as when Draxus spawns in wave 9 he has a shield absorbing all damage for 30 seconds, so attacking him is futile. And that is it, that's all you need to know for Gate Commander Draxus. GrobThok, who feeds the forge. This boss is easier than Draxus and will take much less time to explain, so don't worry. Okay, to begin with, I'll explain how the group should place itself. The positioning should be similar to what we went through with Nefra. The tank keeps the boss faced away, the DPS and healers stack behind the boss. Pretty simple. However, this boss needs to be moved around quite a lot, so keep that in mind. Now the first mechanic you need to look out for is the mining droid. This isn't actually a droid or an ad, it's a debuff which targets any random group member, excluding the tank on GrobThok. The debuff looks like this. When you have it, pools of lava will start spawning underneath you until the debuff wears off. It cannot be cleansed. You have two options when you get this debuff. The first is to move out of the group and run around the sides of the room until the debuff is gone. The second is to run through the ads with the debuff, since the lava pools that you drop will also damage the ads. The second way is a good way to practice for veteran mode, as that is what you'll be doing there. Speaking of the ads, they spawn anywhere between 15 and 30 seconds. It will be a trio of Ugnaughts and they will spawn from random points around the room. They are fairly weak, so don't worry too much about them. Try to AoE them down quickly and then turn your attention back to the boss. When you don't have the mining droid debuff, stay focused on healing the group or damaging the boss, depending on your role, and never stand in the magnet that circles the room. Speaking of the magnet, let's get into the rail mechanic here. So this is the magnet. It circles the room and sucks everything up that walks into it, including you. The idea is to lure the boss into the magnet. However, you must only do this when the boss is using the ability Pipe Smash. Timing is everything on this one. Luckily, in story mode, failing to put the boss into the magnet doesn't mean that you will wipe. However, in veteran mode, you absolutely will. Basically, when GrobThok uses Pipe Smash, he takes less damage, which is bad because you need to kill him. It's actually pretty easy to do this. Let me explain exactly how to do it. This mechanic is of course for your tank. When the fight starts, you'll notice that GrobThok uses an ability called Raw. It's a kernel AoE that deals damage to everything inside it. It also throws the Ugnaughts about, which is pretty funny. Counting the Raws is how we time when to put GrobThok into the magnet. Now, when the fight starts, begin counting the Raws. Once the boss has performed 4 Raws, he will use Pipe Smash. At this point, we drag the boss into the magnet like this. Now, after the first magnet, the boss will use Pipe Smash again every 3 Raws. So count 3 of them and drag him into the magnet once again. Rinse and repeat. Every time you've used a magnet, it will despawn and then respawn somewhere else. It can only ever spawn in the northeast and southwest corners of the room. So just keep an eye on those 2 areas when you're looking for a new magnet. And that is it. That is all you need to know for GrobThok. Corruptor 0. This boss is also fairly easy, but can go wrong very quickly if you don't deal with your ads. To begin with, we have a bunch of ads that need to be killed before the boss enters the arena. These ads also spawn during the fight at random locations in the arena, but with fewer ads. For example, to begin with we get 2 elite ads, and during the fight only 1 elite ad will spawn at a time. Speaking of the elite ad, this is one that you need to look out for. It's called D15 Corruption Droid, and is a ranged attacker. The other version of this droid is called D13 Corruption Droid and uses a melee weapon. Forget about the melee version and focus on the one that uses a cannon. This ad can be an annoyance as it casts an ability called Missile Salvo, which places an AoE under its target and stuns them while dealing damage. Try to stun this droid or interrupt it. If it grabs your healer, it could make things difficult. A good way to deal with this ad, the ranged version or the melee version, is to have your tank pull it and then stun it while tanking the boss. This way your group can AoE nuke it down while still damaging the boss. The other ads to look out for are the repair droids. These droids will heal the other ads, so logically kill them first. Any other ad must also be killed of course, but leave them till after you've dealt with the elite ad and the repair droids. Now after you've killed the first bunch of ads, Corruptor 0 will join the fight. In story mode he is easy. The best way to handle him is to bring him to one of the inside pillars as you see on screen and have your group stack on top of him. Corruptor 0 does deal AoE damage with his smash ability quite often, but it's nothing your healers won't be able to handle. Now it's just a case of rinse and repeat with ads until Corruptor 0 reaches near 25% HP. I should point out that during the fight it's more manageable to group up the ads around the boss. You can do so by using line of sight with the pillar that you're tanking Corruptor 0 next to, just like this on screen. One of the boss's abilities you should also look out for is the Missile Barrage. This is what the cast looks like. When the boss chooses this ability, a small AoE will be placed under all group members. Missiles will fire at you, dealing roughly 3k damage per hit. It's best to spread out while this is happening. When Grob'Thok reaches near 25% HP, he will begin jumping around the room. He does so in a clockwork motion, so he'll jump up, then he'll land, and then he will cast an attack called Unified Beam. This attack is a large laser that deals little damage in story mode, but I do still recommend avoiding it, even if some of your group members want to look funny and jump in the beam anyways. You can avoid the laser beam by standing in one of the sections around the room that doesn't have the line of sight of the laser. Pretty simple really, just avoid it, right? Grob'Thok will jump 4 times in total, so just keep avoiding the laser until then. Once he stops, you can begin attacking him again. Nothing has changed with his attacks, so just finish him off and claim your loot. This fight is more complicated in veteran mode, but that's a video for another time. And that's it, that's all you need to know for Grob'Thok. Dreadmaster Brontes. This is by far my favourite boss encounter in the entire game. It is my pleasure to teach you how to do this. So, Dreadmaster Brontes has 6 phases. I'm going to go through each one and explain what to do. When you enter the boss room, Brontes will be stood in the south. However, when you attack her, she will disappear and phase 1 will begin. Phase 1 consists of 2 large adds, named left hand of Brontes and right hand of Brontes. The idea here is to have at least 1 tank on each of these big adds. You can use a damage dealer who has a taunt ability instead of using 2 tanks if you want to, but that is definitely not recommended for veteran mode. These big adds slam their target and anyone in front of it, so make sure you tank them facing away from the group. During this phase, small adds called Finger of Brontes will also spawn every so often. They need to be killed as soon as possible by the DPS, as they deal more damage the longer they are alive. Now, the 2 big adds will burrow underground and swap sides when they hit a certain amount of HP. This is roughly every time they lose 20% of their health. It's easier if you assign your tanks to control one side of the room each in this phase. That way they don't have to run between both sides to keep their add. So long as you are killing the small adds when they appear, this phase will go smoothly. Keep attacking the 2 big adds until they both finally reach near 20% HP, at which point they will both disappear and phase 2 begins. Phase 2 is fast paced. During this phase, adds called Reach of Brontes spawn in pairs. When they spawn, they target each other and cast a lightning beam. The tricky thing is, they will only spawn on top of a player, so you need to be quick and move away from them because if you get caught in the beam, you're dead. After 4 pairs have spawned, phase 3 begins. Phase 3 is relatively easy to manage. Here we have Brontes spawn in the middle of the room. Have your tank face her towards the north side. The DPS and healers should stack behind Brontes. Now in story mode, Brontes doesn't really do anything that will wipe you, but the add that spawns in this phase will. The add that spawns here is called Corrupted Clone and will enter the fight roughly every 30 seconds. This add is fairly weak, however it does throw out a debuff called Corrupted Nanites. The debuff looks like this. This debuff will need to be cleansed. It should only hit 1 person at a time, but it can kill that 1 person very quickly if not cleansed because it does deal a high amount of damage. Aside from the debuff, the add will also use Laser Blast. This ability is just a front-faced ability and can be interrupted, and it isn't really anything to worry about. The add also takes priority, so kill it as soon as possible when it spawns and then return to damaging Brontes. Once Brontes reaches 50%, phase 4 begins. In this phase, 6 droids will spawn around the room. At the same time, Brontes will cast a huge lightning beam in a clockwork motion. This beam will one-shot kill you if you get caught, so avoid it at all costs. I should also point out that Brontes herself will be enveloped in lightning, so going near her is also a big no-no. The aim for this phase is to destroy the droid adds before the lightning beam hits them, because when the beam hits them they will explode and deal a lot of damage to the entire group, regardless of where you're stood. However, in story mode, you can skip the first droid, which is this one here. Letting this one be consumed by the beam is completely acceptable. Just make sure your group makes its way around the room, killing the other droids. When you kill the final droid, phase 5 begins. Brontes will leave the fight in phase 5. What we have here is very similar to phase 1. The 2 big adds have made a return and 6 small adds are placed around the middle of the room. Luckily, in story mode, this phase is fairly easy. Once again, have your tanks take 1 big add each. damage. This time around, the big ad will cast a slam ability that throws you backwards, so be sure to face it away from your group. The DPS need to focus on the small ads first, killing them off one by one before they start dealing too much damage. As mentioned before, they deal more damage the longer that they are alive for. Something to point out here is these new small purple AoEs that are spawning. They need to be avoided as they deal roughly 20k damage and they will only spawn underneath a player. So keep that in mind. Once the small ads are dead, take down the two big ads, making sure that as a DPS and or healer that you only stand behind the big ad. Once both of these big ads have been killed, Phase 6 begins. Phase 6 is also known as the burn phase. Only Brontes is left now, and it's time to burn her down. The idea here is to have anyone with a taunt, mainly the tanks, lure Brontes to one of the walls around the room. This way she stays in one place. Otherwise, she will run around the room constantly, making it difficult to damage her. When Brontes targets you, she will pick you up and throw you across the room. Use this to your advantage and aim yourself at a wall. It's important to point out the purple AoE also spawns in this phase, except this time it's bigger and deals more damage, so avoid it at all costs. Keep burning down Brontes until she is no more. This is everything you need to know for Dreadmaster Brontes and the Operation Dread Fortress. Okay folks, so a tremendous amount of effort went into making this guide for you, so I would really appreciate it if you could drop some likes on this video. The more likes and comments that we get on this video, the more people will be able to see it. This is also the first installment of my new operation guide series. I am going to be making an operation guide for every single operation in the game, so if there is any kind of improvement you would like to see in the next video, be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. And if you have any questions that wasn't cleared up during the video, then also post that down in the comment section and I will be sure to get back to you. So thank you very much for watching this video guide. I do very much hope that it helped you. Good luck in your Dread Fortress operation, and as always, I will catch you in the next one.